You cannot be serious!
Well, as I say, the multimedia, it's hard to find superlatives to introduce the man. He's a medical doctor. He's amputated people. He's psychiatrically handled people. He's spoken to the world through a microphone which might be gold. It could be platinum by now. And he's a television and radio star. He is just the best. And it is Dr. Ben Fordham from Sydney, Australia. Doc, welcome to You Cannot Be Serious.
Sam Newman, g'day, mate. And I turn my back for 5 minutes and I find that you're in the middle of a media shitstorm.
Well, now, Doc, this is what has bemused me. I have taken a nice belting because I thought I would interview a couple of people who, I don't know why I have to say this, I don't agree with, but there's plenty of people I've interviewed that I don't agree with, and I've suddenly been linked to being anti-Jewish, pro-neo-Nazi. The only thing I do not apologise for interviewing those people, and I'm glad I did. The only thing that I've taken exception to is that one of the lads, the boys, a piece of crud called Blair Cottrell, tried to link me as an opportunist because I took a photograph. I photograph everyone that comes in here and we do a little promo for any of the guests that come in here and be interviewed. He wasn't invited, unlike what he says he's lying. He wasn't invited to the podcast. He came in with the other boy, Thomas Sewell. And he said, do you mind if I sit? I said, mate, you can sit in front of the microphone if you like. I reached out to Thomas Sewell to come in to explain what in the hell he's on about. And then this Blair Cottrell decided to put a photograph of me shaking his hand. He deliberately asked me to shake his hand so that he could think I was compliant with their platform. Yep.
Well, here's the interesting thing with the whole thing, though, right? Because I read the story online earlier in the week where it was like, Sam Newman gives platform to Nazis. I think that's what the headline was. Sam Newman gives platform to Nazis. Then you released the podcast and you were cross-examining them, hammering them at times, and essentially getting a message across. I thought, this was my interpretation in parts, that you thought that some elements of what they were saying and doing made them dickheads. And I thought that came across through the podcast in the first minutes of the discussion. So why have we got to this point where if you're just seen with someone, if you're in the same postcode, if you're in the same photograph, it's seen as an endorsement of the person you're standing next to? I mean, think of all the people I interview on radio, all the people you might have interviewed on a podcast, and if you're debating someone, you're discussing something with someone, it doesn't mean that you agree with everything they say. And certainly in the podcast that I heard, you were challenging the arguments that these people were putting forward. And now we know that one of them has copped a major serve from you, because now I read the headline in the Herald Sun, Newman turns on star effer neo-Nazi. You've called one of them a parasite. So, I mean, it's just crazy where people react so quickly where they think, oh, well, you're platforming this person. You're giving a platform to that person. Well, sometimes the best conversations come about when ideas are tested in an environment like that.
The sage advice of the doctor from Sydney, mate. I really appreciate you saying that, because that's my exact point. The reason I was pissed off was because the boy Cottrell tried to link me to their cause and had pictures of me on the footy show and saying I was actually could be one of them, the old Foss could be one of them, and that's what ticked me off. Not because I interviewed him, I make no apology for that, and I reached out. He didn't reach out to me. Tom Purse, what's his name?
Thomas Sewell.
Yeah, I reached out to him. I said, I'd like to, mate, and the only reason I know about these boys is because they keep appearing in the media. And I thought, let's just come and have a chat.
I'm intrigued as well, Sam. When I see the footage or the photographs of neo-Nazis all dressed in black, and they might be catching up in a cave somewhere in the Grampians, or they might be marching through the streets of Adelaide, the first thought I have, and this is just brutal honesty, is what a bunch of losers and dickheads. That's my first reaction. But my second reaction is probably one of curiosity in terms of thinking, what goes on inside the head of one of these people? How do they get involved with this? What are their messages? What are their arguments? What are my counter-arguments? And, I'd react the same way if I was interviewing someone like this, or if I ran into them in a pub somewhere. I'd be going, mate, have you got a screw loose somewhere, or a kangaroo loose in the top paddock? What's going on in your head? And let's just test this proposition for a moment, Sam, that if you're seen in the same room as someone that you associate with their views, there's a TV show, I don't know what it's called, but it's online, or it's on one of the streaming services. I've seen ads for it where it's about people who are serving jail time for murder. And it's Piers Morgan, right? The famous TV host from Great Britain.
Yep.
He's the host of it, right? And it's him sitting across from people who are serving life sentences for murder. Now, does that mean that Piers Morgan supports them as murderers and thinks it's a great idea that they've killed people? No. Now, I haven't watched the show, but I'm guessing it would be Piers Morgan cross-examining these people about why they did the evil things they did. Let's drop off this idea that just by seeing someone in the company of someone else, it means that they approve of every message that person has ever shared in their life. It's ridiculous.
So I said to someone who said exactly the same things. I said, if I had an opportunity, I would love to speak to Weinstein from America, the film producer, Epstein, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Ayatollah Khamenei. I'd like to speak to all those people. And the only thing, and I've got criticised for this, is standing in front of the sign, smart as Sam, shaking someone's hand. I'm now linked to their doctrine. Every guest that comes in here, I do for our promotional purposes. No good asking people to come in if you're not going to say who you're speaking to, and they use that, or this boy, the Cottrell, used that to try and promote me as part of their push and who they are. I notice a woman, a journalist, Brooke, hyphenated name, I can't think of it, but I gave her credit. She texted me before it even went to air and said, and I texted her back, and and she put faithfully in. Now she is, someone said, she's given you a nice belting in the paper today. I read what Brooke, whatever her name is, said about me in the paper today. She said, I've listened to the podcast, so you don't have to. It was a disgrace. I agree with Brooke, as a matter of fact. It was a disgrace. The lies that she said they told lies, and they didn't, and they said, she's having a go at you. I said, I actually not sure if she's having a go at me. I agree with Brooke. Whatever she said was pretty scathing on the podcast. I thank her for listening to it for a start, and the very fact that she said, I've listened to it so everyone doesn't have to. It's just ensured that people will listen to it. But that was not the ulterior motive of me saying that. It's the fact that I actually agree with what she said, but. I think that nothing disgusts me more than people who pick on other people based on the colour of their skin, their faith, their sexuality, or anything else. I mean, I just find it so dumb and simplistic. I absolutely detest that kind of thing. But I'm not going to fall into this trap of saying that you're not allowed to interview someone you disagree with. I mean, if that's the case, can you think of all of the left-leaning journalists in the United States of America who've interviewed Donald Trump? Can you think about all of the Democrat-leaning journalists who'd be putting in requests at the moment because they want to interview the newly installed returned President of the United States of America? Does that mean if the Morning Joe hosts are sitting across the desk from Donald Trump that they're platforming Donald Trump, or they agree with Donald Trump? And don't get me wrong, they'll be accused of all of those things. Anyone who sits in the same room as Donald Trump will be accused of platforming Donald Trump, even if they ask Donald Trump the toughest questions he's ever been asked in 2025. So, look, you can't win with people who think that a photograph is an endorsement. And, Sam, I've had a photograph come my way where someone said to me, there's a bloke who's a con man, and he's been going around ripping people off, and he claims to be a friend of yours. Can you please explain how you know this guy? Anyway, this was a journalist many years ago. They sent me a copy of the photograph, and
I looked at the picture and I went, I've never seen that bloke before in my life. But guess what? I was standing there, Sam, shaking his hand. Now, when I had a closer look at the photograph, it's taken near a red carpet somewhere. So It wasn't on a red carpet, but it was near there. And what I've worked out is that while I was attending an event, someone said to me, hey, mate, can I have a photo? I say, sure, no worries. I had my photo taken with this guy. I didn't know that he was then going around ripping people off. I don't know his name. I don't know his business. I think he used the same image for a Tinder profile as well. So I had a couple of people saying, how do you know this guy? I said, look, I met him for 16 seconds 6 years ago. I don't know who the bloke is. So, it's very hard arguing with people when they're going to take such a simplistic view on the world. And I think considering all of the conflicts in the world right now, Sam, sometimes we can benefit by having conversations with people, learning a little bit about people. And if they're morons, like the blokes who you had on the podcast, then guess what? As Brooke said in the Herald Sun, Brooke Gerbert Craig, who's the journalist you're talking about.
That's her, yep.
You can learn a lot about the bullshit that comes out of the mouths of people by actually putting them on the air and giving people a chance to listen.
Doc, that is so. The Blair Cottrell, he insisted I shake his hand. He said, I stood there. He said, "Can I have a photo?" He said, "Now, can I shake your hand?" He used that as if I was compliant, and that's what pissed me off. Nothing else. I don't care what they say about me, and I'm now considered to be anti-Jewish. I have no skin in the game with any of this. I just thought it would be interesting to find out what makes people like that tick, and I would do it again. And I'm not apologising for anything. And if anyone from the jury wants to come on here and chat to me, I'll be happy to do that, or anyone else. Could I ask?
Oh, look, I'd react the same way if someone said to me, look, you've got an opportunity to interview Kim Jong-un or President Xi Jinping of China or Vladimir Putin.
Or the Ayatollah Khamenei or the people from
I'd be
Hamas.
saying, all right. I want to, it doesn't mean I believe in what they say.
Exactly. Now, do you believe? Now, here's I don't know if you want what you want to speak about. I noticed that Anthony Albanese says that we are going to help try and rebuild Hamas. Not the Gaza. Do you think that Australia should be trying to do that, or do you agree with that statement he made?
What? Well, he wants to rebuild Gaza.
He said Australia should be part of trying to help rebuild Gaza.
Well, look, Gaza is a graveyard. Gaza is destroyed. When I saw the footage recently during the ceasefire of 300,000 Palestinians returning to Gaza and returning to their homes, and you have a look at the footage, you have a look at the photos, you ask yourself, what homes? There are very few left. As far as Australia's involvement in foreign conflicts, I reckon Australia is probably growing a bit of a mood that is similar to that in America, where people are increasingly frustrated with the amount of money that we're spending overseas on overseas issues, as important as they might be when we've got concerns at home. And let's face it, Sam, at the moment we're waking up every second day, and there's another one today that I've broken on air this morning that I'll tell you about, where we wake up and we find that there's this racially motivated graffiti that's been sprayed across the place. Now, 90% of those attacks have been targeted towards the Jewish community, and they're absolutely reprehensible, and I can understand why Jewish Australians at the moment would be nervous going to bed and not knowing what they're going to wake up to. The one that I've shared this morning, and this is now appearing on news websites, so you'll be able to see it for yourself, it's an anti-Aussie attack this morning. It's happened on a petrol station in Sydney, and one of my listeners shared it with me in the early hours of this morning, where someone's actually gone on and spray painted "I hate Australia" right at a petrol station, and dressed up in dark clothing and with their face covered with a motorcycle helmet. They've got an angle grinder out, and they have chopped through the petrol hoses at the Bowser at this petrol station in Campbelltown in Sydney, or not too far from Campbelltown. So, look, it's very, very upsetting at the moment that you've got these foreign... and it's like, mate, the reason people want to live in this country so much is because we don't have to deal with the stuff that goes on in other parts of the world, where we don't have our heads in the sand. We know what's going on. We read about it. We see it. But we don't want that stuff playing out here, which is why if you handed out a visa to people in many of these parts of the world and said, who wants a ticket to Australia, they'd be first on the plane. They wouldn't even bother packing their bags. So that's why I appeal to the people who are carrying out these racially motivated attacks in Australia, whether they be on the Jewish community, which they seem to be at the moment overwhelmingly, whether they be, there has been the odd attack recently as well in the last 6 months against the Islamic faith as well, or the Aussie one today, anti-Australia graffiti on a petrol station in Sydney, please. If you want to live in a way that people are accustomed to in other parts of the world where this is a normal part of life, then get on a plane and go somewhere else. We don't want this stuff here in Australia.
Is it getting to the stage, Doc, where the law enforcement and the local police are just not up to it? Is it time almost for the head of this country, the Prime Minister, whoever he may be, gets the military or the army into law enforcement and...
I don't think so. I mean, look...
Well, how are you going to stop it?
Well, you probably can't. Cops can't be on every corner of every street, right? CCTV is there, and to be fair, I know that the New South Wales Police, for example, have been very good in tracking down a lot of the perpetrators of this faith-based violence and anti-Semitic attacks on the Jewish community. There have been a number of arrests, lots of charges. They've done a good job. Yes, there's been criticism of Anthony Albanese for not tackling this earlier and sending a stronger message to the people who are the victims of it and also the perpetrators.
So what's the stronger message, Doc?
Well, I don't know.
The army, the military.
And look, I don't know. I'm reluctant about calling in the military. I think overwhelmingly we've just got to share a message with everyone to say, we don't want this here. Your fellow Australians don't want it here. And also, if you care so passionately about what's happening on the other side of the world, there's a very simple solution here, and that is book yourself a flight, take a month off work, and go and help out in that part of the world. Whether that be someone who might be very sympathetic towards the Palestinian cause, well, you know what? In the West Bank and in Gaza, there are charities and community groups there. You can go and dedicate a month of your time to help the Palestinian people.
But Doc,
there are Jewish Australians, Sam, who've decided that they want to be over in Israel at the moment to be helping the Israeli Defence Force at this time in history. So,
but Doc,
go and do it there. Don't do it here.
But you're too moral. You're too polite. You're too educated. You're too well bred, like most. But you're not speaking to those people. You're speaking to the people who have no interest in what you say at all about getting on together. You're not speaking to the converted. You're preaching to people who are just
Sam,
morons.
It's very hard to police morons, right? There are morons every single day. At the moment, there seem to be a lot of them involved in these types of attacks.
Carjacks.
But, mate, sending the Australian Defence Force to hang out outside schools and community groups and petrol stations around Sydney and around Melbourne, I don't think is an effective use of the military's time and energy and resources. And look, at the moment, we've been relatively lucky, and I say that while I touch wood. We've had that horrific bombing of a synagogue in Melbourne. We've had a caravan filled with explosives that was discovered in Sydney. I mean, thankfully, and we should thank our lucky stars, nobody's been killed in these attacks so far. But, Sam, it's only a matter of time when you've got people firebombing people. It's only a matter of time until someone is killed.
Well, I went a bit far with the military. What about special forces? Each state having special forces or SAS people trained to go to the violent and turmoil areas that they know of. There's more carjackings and people robbing homes, and it is out of control, mate.
I know what you're saying. and I know there'll be some people listening saying that I'm putting this in the too hard basket, but in reality, most of the most effective policing done these days is done after the fact. You can't stand there and stop it from happening in the first place, because whoever was about to do what they were going to do won't do it because they go, hang on, there's a cop there. So we'll go to the next petrol station or we'll go to the next suburb. We've got CCTV footage. Our phones track us everywhere we go. Sadly, it's after the fact when the policing is best done these days a lot of the time. And they have done in New South Wales a very good job, I can speak from personal experience, of tracking the people down who are the perpetrators.
I brought this up with Wayne Carey about, I don't know if you... Mark Latham got belted a bit for saying that the MCC was woke because they wouldn't put up the fact that A. Sutherland, who is a woman, was put onto the honour board for making a double century at the MCG, and they didn't delineate that she was a female, and they said, well, there was no need to. I would say out of courtesy and respect you should say that she's a female because she's the only person who's on the board. Do you think that's not right?
Well, I don't really care. I mean, if someone scored a double century at the MCG, and the tradition is that their names go up on a board, then you put their name up on the board. I don't think you need to say, I don't care again. I suppose, what, are we going to have pronouns as well and say he, she, they, them? Who cares? If they scored a double century, they're obviously a champion cricketer and their name goes up on the board.
Of course, Doc. But I'm agreeing with you vehemently, but out of respect, wouldn't that person, A. Sutherland, like to be singled out the fact that she is actually a woman and that she is the first? You wouldn't?
No, I don't think she would at all. I think she just wants to be treated the same as any other cricketer.
Well,
and if she's
not
good enough that she's scored a double century and her name goes up on the board, no. Do we need to say she's a female?
Well, she's not treated as any other cricketer because all the names on there are men, are males, and wouldn't it be completely reasonable out of respect to say this is the first female that has been put on the MCC board for making a double century? I reckon that's respecting her.
Well, Sam, you could change the lettering to the colour pink if you really want to go down the path you're going, right?
I'm
and we
not
can
going
put some
down
sparkles
the path
on it as well.
This is not agenda.
I think Mark Latham's got too much time on his hands, and she scored the double century. A name goes up on the board, and good luck to her. Now, look, can I throw one your way?
Please.
Because this will be an interesting one to get your take on. We've had a bit of a political scandal in New South Wales this week about politicians having chauffeur-driven cars to take them around the place when they're working, fair enough. But there's a minister in New South Wales who's had to resign this week, Joe Halen, after it was revealed that she'd booked one of these government chauffeurs to take her and 5 mates out on the Australia Day long weekend to go to a piss-up for someone's surprise 40th birthday party. And then yesterday, I revealed on air to the Premier, Chris Minns, here in New South Wales, that there was a second example of the minister doing the same thing. So now they're saying, all right, well, you can only use your government chauffeur for work reasons. Now, do you really reckon that these people don't know that they're taking the piss when they're going out on the piss and asking us to pay for the driver? And Sam, I've got to tell you, in this case, this is what makes this one worse. This minister, Joe Halen, was at her holiday home. So she called the driver, who drove a couple of hours from Sydney to her holiday house, and then her and her 5 mates from the holiday house to the winery. The driver sits outside for 3 hours while they get on the dribble, and then the driver drives them back to the holiday house. He drives himself back to Sydney. 13 hours later, on the Australia Day long weekend, he finally clocks off for the day, when the minister and her friends could have booked a taxi and spent $50 each. I mean, how out of touch can you get?
Well, I'll tell you how out of touch you can get, because the great Donald Trump is about to put his foot on all that stuff, snouts in the trough, the pigs that just swill on our money, and he has put a cat amongst the pigeons over in America for all that sort of stuff. And I can tell you here that a politician here was was found that he used to get the government car to take his dog to have it clipped at the dog salon. That was in the news here years ago, that he was using the government car to take his dog down to the dog trimming salon. So that's so.
But Sam, this is the great gap between the real world and politics too. In the real world, even companies, in the private sector, have changed their ways dramatically in recent years. I mean, when I started at Channel 9 years and years ago, everyone had an American Express. You could take the camera crew out to lunch, and you could you could fill out the form and say that you had some work contact you took out to lunch. You could charge $100 here, $300 there. Channel 9 would pick up the tab. Well, it was probably about 15 years ago that someone at Channel 9 came into the CEO's office and went, right, let's take all the American Expresses off people. And if you want to have a work lunch, you put it on your own card and then you justify why we should reimburse you. I mean, I took my executive producer out to lunch a week before we started back on air this year. 90% of the lunch was spent talking about work, but I didn't put in an expense form to 2GB to get someone else to pay for it because I knew that in this day and age, it's just a little bit too rich doing that. So that's the crazy thing. I mean, when they still think they can get away with it, wake up and smell the coffee, times have changed.
But wasn't that in the days when you could put in a fringe benefits tax to say that you were doing it on work? And now they don't have that anymore, do they? Because when I started at 9, they gave me to sign on round the world airline tickets, and when I signed the last contract, they said, well, we can't do that anymore because there's no such thing as a fringe benefits tax, and we'll just give you the extra. We'll just give you the extra money.
Yeah, well, Peter Dutton has vowed to bring back some tax benefits for people who have business lunches, and that's to just try and encourage a bit more spending for the restaurant sector and bars and cafes and everything else. But look, the days of the long lunch still exist, thankfully, because I still enjoy one. But the days of the long lunch, correct, the days of the long lunch where you get someone else to pay for it, I think there's a simple Aussie rule these days, which is when you're having fun, you pick up the tab.
Now,
when it's work, someone else can pay.
I know you're just one final quick thing. Sam Kerr called someone stupid and white. Surely you couldn't go to prison or what? Surely they've got better things to do over in Britain than worry about Sam Kerr calling a copper stupid and white.
Well, I thought Sam Kerr's behaviour was atrocious. I don't think she should captain the Matildas again. I think she's lost her platform as a role model for young women and young people out there. And guess what, Sam? She's now admitted, and this is new from the court case in the last few hours, she's now admitted she was drunk and angry on the night of her arrest. And when she started spraying the police officer and she said, "You're effing stupid and white," why would she mention white? What has skin colour got to do with anything? I think that's called racism. And I think if someone said you're stupid and black, they would be labelled racist. So I think Sam Kerr has got to actually come clean now and explain why she singled out the skin colour of the police officer. And if she's admitted that she was drunk and angry and she should have gone home, I think she owes the police officer an apology. And I don't think that she should be captaining the Matildas.
On that note, Doc, you've indirectly scolded me for me suggesting they've got better things to do. You say they haven't got better things to do. I'm with you.
Guess what? And guess what? This is the joy of having a conversation. You don't have to agree with people all the time. We can agree to disagree. And how good's that? How lucky are we to live here?
I tell you what we're lucky about, Doc, that you've come on the line and give us your opinion. Particularly, I'm very appreciative of you having that opinion about me interviewing those people. I don't need any help. I don't need. Don't feel sorry for myself. I would do it again. But I really appreciate your insight into that and your opinion.
When I agree with you, I agree with you. And as you know, when I disagree with you, I disagree with you, and we still move on and we still keep on talking, and I'd encourage other people to do the same. And by the way, I've loved listening to Wayne Carey, the Duck, on the podcast. I think you two have got a very, very special bond, and I think you bring out the best in him, and I'm fascinated by him. The more I listen to Wayne, the more I'm just interested in what's going on inside that brain of his. So I'll be listening, and I look forward to hearing what he's had to say today when the podcasts are loaded later on.
Good on you, Doc. You bloody star. All the best, my friend.
Yibbida, yibbida. That's all, folks.